Last year, we missed the rustling of pages. We missed hearing some of you sing along to Avinu Malkeinu. We missed you. And during the course of these past 18 months, we miss you. We are so glad to have those of you who are here present. It is so good to see you. And those of you at home, we see you too. And if we haven't met you yet and you found us on the internet, we look forward to seeing you and knowing you soon. I'll be honest, we've been looking for you, and it's hard to find you. I miss Oneg. I miss pickup on Sundays at the JLC, crammed at the front door. I miss bumping into you and exchanging pleasantries at the supermarket or at Starbucks. I miss milling in the village center, in the courtyard, or at warehouse. We miss you. Pirkei Avot, ethics and wisdom literature from around 200 CE. It tells us, Al tifros min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the community. But we've had to. We've had to. Of course, we stayed connected and did all that we could to care for one another, and we saw this much of each other, but we've been separated from one another. And as we try to patch and restitch the fabric that binds a community together, as we try to imagine what a community it looks like as we move through and, God willing, beyond this virus, we have to find each other again. As we were reflecting on this year and these high holy days, a dear friend and colleague in D.C., Rabbi Stephanie Crawley, put it perfectly. She said, I feel like I'm missing the lobby of my life. You know, the lobby, those little moments where we get to see each other and connect. Not the big conversations that we have over a long cup of coffee or something else to share. Not the deep talks that last for hours. It's the little ones. The hey, how are yous? The soft touch. The way we get a sense of where we are, of how we are. And some of you we've seen. And what a miracle and a blessing it has been to be together, even though it's still not quite the same. For some of you, the right choice has been to remain at home, and we honor you for making the right choice for you and for your family. With no pressure to make a change, I just want to say, I miss you. And the high holy days last year were hard. But at least in hindsight, it felt easier in a way. The rules were clearer. We were having what felt like a shared experience. All of us were at home. All of us were hoping for a light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. We were grateful for Zoom. You remember that? When you were grateful for Zoom and not exasperated by the mere mention of it? We were sharing in a digital experience, amazed that we could feel together, united even, though we were apart. In this moment, it feels different. Surely, we're together in hope. But it's harder to know where we are. We are quite literally in different places. And we're in different places. Our experience of this past year has just been different. Some of us are living in homes full of vaccinated people with vaccinated friends and community. Some of us have little ones who can't get vaccinated and who just feel unsure, worried, angry, afraid. Some of us are alone. Some of us are immunocompromised and just don't know what's next. Let me just say this. For those of you at home, if by chance and by choice you are not vaccinated yet, please get the vaccine. The staff, the clergy, the doctors who we have consulted throughout these past many months, we know the vaccines are safe, effective, and the most important tool in keeping our community safe. And the vaccine, it's not just for you. You get it for my kids, for all our kids. It's how we take care of one another. Al tifros min hatzibur. Let's do what we can so we can come back together again. Because we have to find each other. We have to find each other despite our disparate realities and our different experiences over the past year and a half. And with all the predictable and unpredictable ways that this virus acts and affects our communities, even those realities that we think we understand are changing. Have you been feeling like the ground beneath your feet keeps shifting? Like it's hard to feel steady? Like you're unmoored or ungrounded? This year, it's hard to know where to find each other. Hard to plant our feet and know where we are. Because this isn't normal. It's not normal for humans to live in a perpetual state of crisis, to feel like each and every decision will affect not just our lives and the lives of our families, but the well-being of our entire community. That weight is heavy. And we can name that heaviness. We can say aloud that it's difficult. And it's that ability, that willingness to say hard things that can be our antidote to the fragmenting of our community, to the necessity to be separated from one another. Thoughtful, intentional conversation can help us chart a path forward together that will recognize where we've been and whom we have become because of this experience that we have been having together and apart. Let's take a cue from the Passover Seder. At the end of the story, at the end of the describing of the hardships and the miracles, the moments of despair and the moments of celebration, to close the Magid, to close the telling, we say, "V'higarata levincha bayom hahu lemor, ba'avur ze asa Adonai li b'tzeti mimitzrayim." And you shall tell your child on that day, "It is for the sake of this, that God did all these things for me as I left Egypt." As I left Egypt, the narrow place, the place of constriction and degradation. Yes, at this point in the Seder, the child is probably tired and hungry, and you are probably tired and hungry. But the text demands the personal. What God did for me, how I experienced this trial and triumph. Reading the history book, telling the national story is not enough without injecting the personal. And that is the tremendous wisdom of our tradition. That we tell stories of meaning and purpose. That we come to synagogue to open our prayer books and say our lines, to offer ancient words so that we might fill them with our souls, with our spirits, and with our own stories. Look, here's my concern. I'm worried. I'm worried that we're just going to fall into new habits. That we're assuming and creating a new normal without the proper intention and care. We are in the midst of a grand human moment of tragedy. And as we chart our course through and, God willing, emerge, we have to recognize and name and tell the stories of that true experience. And through that, maybe we can recognize and find new strengths. We can recognize and find growth, even. We can make the world anew, having learned from our experience. And some of us are still in crisis. Some of us are still in the midst of the trauma and not yet ready to reflect on growth. We won't rush you. We'll hold you. We'll see you. We'll hear you. And when you're ready, we'll join together in a sacred conversation. A conversation about the 3 L's. You've never heard of the 3 L's before because I made them up. Don't worry. The 3 L's. Loved, lost, and learned. Loved. Maybe you loved the solitude. Maybe you loved the time with family. Maybe you loved the walks. Maybe you loved seeing kids and pets poke their heads into Zoom meetings. Maybe you loved the standing calls with friends from across the country, across the globe. Maybe you loved the time to read or the time to think. Maybe you loved watching every moment of the NBA playoffs, or who knows, maybe you loved attending Shabbat services in slippers and basketball shorts. To say that good things came in the midst of this crisis is not to undermine the existence of that suffering. We can share with each other what was good for us in this time. And it's possible, if not likely, that what was good for one brought sorrow to another. We can hold that complexity. Hazorim bedima berina yiktzoru. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Even through tragedy, we can find, name, and celebrate the joy. Lost. Let's also talk about what we lost. Let's talk about what's been hard. Some of us have lost loved ones. For many, that sadness was compounded by the loss of full access to the ritual power of our tradition to buoy us during a time of mourning. Some of us, myself included, may have gotten sick or cared for someone who was suffering from this virus. And there are other losses. The loss of joyful moments, of celebrations, of the way that the life cycle moment was supposed to be. And when those moments had to change, you still found real and tremendous beauty. And it's still okay to name the sense of loss. Or maybe the loss is different. The loss of connection or community. A sadness, a loneliness, or pain from isolation and distance. Maybe you lost optimism, patience, enthusiasm. There's power in naming that sadness and that hurt. We might even find camaraderie in that experience, that we can show and speak about real life, not just as it appears on Instagram and Facebook. What if we didn't have to hide it, to hide our rough edges? What if we had a safe place to say it and to share it? And what if, whispered the rabbi, what if that place was the synagogue? Because in those moments of sorrow, God is with us. Our tradition insists upon it. The psalmist writes, Imo anochi betzara, I'm with you in sadness. The sages say that when we weep, God weeps. The Shulchan Aruch, a legal codex from the 16th century, tells us that when we go to visit the sick, we should sit at the foot of the bed, because God is sitting atop the head of the bed, also there to comfort and strengthen the sick. God is with us in our ailments. When we are exiled far away from our land, Shekhinah, God's dwelling presence, goes with us. While the ancient Israelites sat by the rivers of Babylon and wept, God sat next to them, crying along with them. And when we are in our homes, unsure of what might come next, God is with us there too. To speak of loss, that's our job. Not to try and fix it or make it go away, but just to speak of it. That too is sacred. Loved, lost, learned. Number 3. I have something I need to admit to you. Over these past 18 months, during the COVID times, I watched a lot of British baking show. But I did not bake a single sourdough bread. I didn't learn a new language. I didn't buy a Peloton. I didn't pick up a new instrument. I just survived. And honestly, I was worrying. Did I do the pandemic wrong? Did I not make enough of myself and of this time? And then this is where the science and research on post-traumatic growth has been tremendously instructive for me, and I hope for you as well. Dr. Betsy Stone, a brilliant teacher at our movement's rabbinical seminary and rabbinical education and cantorial schools. She came to speak at BJBE for a fireside chat this spring and just spoke to over 100 Jewish educators from across Chicagoland. Thank you, Missy. Dr. Betsy Stone has been writing and speaking about post-traumatic growth throughout the pandemic. Do you remember back in May, during that incredible and sadly short-lived stage of reemergence? Then she wrote an article titled, "Are We Hugging?" In it, she writes, researchers looking at how people grow after trauma find there are 6 areas of post-traumatic growth. None of us does all of them, and we never finish. Growth is a continuous process. They are awareness of personal strengths, reprioritization of values, deeper and more meaningful relationships, appreciation of life, creativity, and spiritual change. Awareness of strengths, reprioritizing values, deeper relationships, appreciating life, creativity, and spiritual change. None of us does all of them. So, my friends who are also bread recipe impaired, fear not. We too can pause and reflect on how this experience has changed us. Because this experience has changed us. Whether we can identify it yet or not, it has. It has, and it will continue to change who we are. Richard Tedeschi is an emeritus professor of psychology at UNC Charlotte and one of the founders of the idea of post-traumatic growth. Last summer in the Harvard Business Review, he wrote, "Be patient. Be patient as you work through and facilitate the process of post-traumatic growth." Those of us practicing in this field know that timing is crucial. Growth cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. However, when you and others are ready, it is worth the effort. Let's make sure that we derive something positive from this time of struggle. The possibilities for personal and collective growth should not be squandered. And so we ask, what did you learn? Did you discover personal resources you didn't know you had? Did you recommit to family and finding balance? Did you paint or write or create? Did you start attending services more often, finding new appreciation for the sacred? Did you realize something about yourself that you want to carry with you? Despite the trauma, despite the crisis, we can grow and we can learn. We can see how we have been affected and grow from it, evolve into the people we are called to be as this new year begins. What did you love? What did you lose? What did you learn? I ask you these questions in earnest. Gather your family, gather your friends. I'll facilitate for you. I'll give you a cheat sheet if you don't want to be near me. That's fine too. But let's give ourselves time and space to thoughtfully reflect on where we have been as we imagine how to find each other again, how to find ourselves again. I'll tell you what I've learned. I learned how important it is to tell the people I love that I love them. Each time I call my closest friends who are scattered across the country, I make sure to tell them how much I appreciate them and what they mean to me before the call ends. So before I close tonight, let me tell you, it is so good to have you here. It is so good to join together for this sacred moment. I see you. I see you for who you are. You are a community built thoughtfully, with vision and with purpose. You are the place where community matters. And when this community has these conversations, when we see ourselves as having changed and grown, when we identify what we've learned and what matters to us, we can allow it to affect our decisions and the way we live our lives. The stakes are too high. We can't allow what happens next to happen by accident or by default. We have to give ourselves space to thoughtfully, sacredly reflect on what we've been through and what we are still going through. We have to speak aloud each and every truth. We'll engage together in conversation that will facilitate growth, that will help us see what really matters to us. And then we will make a choice of what we will do and who we will be. We who have sown in tears, we who yearn for joy, we who yearn for connection, we who yearn for holiness. When we pause, when we notice the universe whispering to us, we have the opportunity to make a choice. God of renewal, God of hope, God who opens a path for the righteous. In this year of 5782, help us choose growth and choose honesty. Help us choose community and connection. Help us choose blessing and goodness. Dear God, let us choose to live, to really live. Shana Tova.
בחרת בחיים, choose to live, to really live. ובחרת בחיים, choosing life and living blessing. ובחרת בחיים. There's a moment in time where you see a flash of light or feel a slight wisp of wind, and you notice a momentary pause as if the universe is holding her breath. Re natati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך. ובחרת בחיים, choose to live, to really live. ובחרת בחיים, choosing life and living blessing. ובחרת בחיים. In the moment, in the light, in the whisper of wind, in the pause, in the moment, in the light, you can choose to live. ובחרת to really live. Oh, B'charta b'chaim, choosing life and living blessing. B'charta b'chaim.